The magnetic storm rolled in without warning. Above the flooded jungle canopy of Vyerks, the sky cracked open, violet arcs of plasma streaking through dense clouds, like claws across a wound. Ethan Core stood ankle-deep in brackish water atop the fractured deck of Forward Outpost Delta 7. Every comms relay was down, solar panels fused to ash, and the perimeter drones floated dead around him, half-submerged like broken bones. Vyerks had never been a kind planet. Once designated a terraforming candidate, it had drowned in its own atmosphere decades ago, its shallow seas swallowing what was once equatorial rainforest. Now, beneath layers of vine-choked water and volatile gases, something older stirred, something the storms didn't wash away. Ethan adjusted the seals on his helmet. His suit systems buzzed erratically, trying to recalibrate after the surge. He glanced at the holomap, still distorted, then leapt into the water. He dove through the thick layers, kicking past skeletal branches and clouds of alien silt. The jungle floor was a graveyard of metal and bone. Somewhere below, beneath a curtain of pulsating coral, lay the mission's true objective, a black box core. It had been ejected from the command module before the storm hit. Buried data, encrypted protocols, things command wanted back at any cost. His oxygen meter blinked amber, 65%. He pressed forward, then something moved. It was quick. A flash of ridged scales, a glint of bioluminescence. At first he thought it was a deep-dweller predator, common on Vyerks. But no, this creature wasn't attacking. It was asterisk drowning, caught in a whirlpool of toxic sediment. A creature thrashed, long, powerful limbs, gilled neck, chest heaving in convulsions. Its body was tangled in fiber cables from a fallen drone, the debris dragging it downward into the deeper current. It was Dravari. Ethan froze. The Dravari were apex hunters of the outer systems, known for stealth, sonar lure tactics, and a violent history against human colonists. Even half-conscious, the creature radiated danger. Every tactical instinct in Ethan's body screamed, "Leave it! Let it sink!" But something cracked inside him. Maybe it was the soundless way it struggled, or the way its arm, scaled but vaguely human in motion, reached toward him as the whirlpool deepened. Ethan surged forward. He slashed the cables with his utility blade, grabbed the creature by the torso, and kicked hard toward the surface. The weight was immense. Every second dragged his own body closer to exhaustion, the oxygen meter now pulsing red. He breached the surface with a gasp, hauling the alien onto the twisted remains of a landing pad. Water gushed from the creature's gills, but it didn't breathe. Think oxygen, direct injection. Ethan activated the emergency O2 bypass module, jammed the probe beneath the creature's dorsal crest, where neural junctions clustered and pulsed. Nothing. He pulsed again, a sudden convulsion. Then the creature's eyes snapped open. Not eyes, exactly. More like glowing obsidian orbs layered with bioelectric patterns. They locked onto Ethan. There was no attack, no hiss, no claws. Only contact. Ethan staggered back. A flood of images slammed into his brain, unfamiliar yet vivid. Jungle towers seen from above. Red waves crashing onto black cliffs. A sense of time folding, years, perhaps centuries, compressed into seconds. Then a symbol, a warning. He screamed, fell backward. The world spun. When he came to, he was lying on the cracked platform, lungs burning, helmet off. Rain hissed on the metal around him. The Dravari was beside him, curled loosely, no longer hostile, breathing in shallow rhythms. And behind them, both. Something jutted out from the muddy water. A rusted archway, half buried, paint flaked off metal, revealing a symbol that shouldn't have been there. 3 concentric rings encasing a downward-pointing triangle. It was the insignia of the old Terran Weapons Division, disbanded after the Treaty of Thessal Prime. Their sites were supposed to have been dismantled, erased from history. But here, deep in the drowned belly of a dead world, one remained. Ethan stared. The storm hadn't just revealed a creature. It had uncovered a secret buried by both war and time. Ethan Core had always felt more comfortable beneath the surface. Even as a child on the coastal ruins of Cygna Prime, he'd spent hours diving through coral mazes and rusted ship husks, chasing silence in the deep. The water didn't ask questions. It didn't betray. It simply swallowed you whole. Now, at 34, he moved through it like a ghost, his breath slow, his body taut with memory. The jungle above Vierks was a nightmare of rot and noise, but down here, where light bent in green shafts and every ripple spoke of something lurking just beyond, Ethan felt grounded. He hadn't worn a military badge in over a decade. Once, he was Lieutenant Ethan Core, biosurvival specialist in the Terran Recon Forces. Then came Operation Obsidian, a black op turned bloodbath. His unit sent in to retrieve a rogue AI core, promised extraction within 2 hours. No one came. He watched his team drown, some in acid tides, others in silence when the uplinks failed and backup never arrived. Ethan made it out, barely, but something in him stayed there, buried with the rest. After that, he disappeared from the ranks. No ceremony, no court-martial, just a blank spot in the records and a man who no longer saluted anyone. He reemerged 2 years later as a freelance diver and jungle ops specialist, contracting for risk-tier missions in abandoned war zones and forgotten systems. Not for money, not even redemption. He told himself he did it for knowledge, but the truth was simpler. Down here, no one could lie to you. That morning, a signal had drawn him deeper into the flooded basins of Vierks, a weak, repeating beacon pulsing from beneath layers of mud and mineral algae. It came from a structure half swallowed by time. A Terran warning station, judging by the encryption signature. Ethan's pulse had quickened. He didn't believe in fate, but coincidence like this tasted deliberate. Key followed him. The alien had no name at first, no voice. Just movement, fluid, cautious, almost reverent. Ethan had expected hostility. Instead, the Dravari watched him with a quiet wariness, neither fleeing nor attacking, as if waiting, testing him. It had been 2 days since the storm, 2 days since he pulled the creature from death, since its eyes had burned images into his skull he hadn't asked to see. He should have reported it, sent an alert drone, activated Protocol 9 and locked it in containment. But he hadn't. Now they moved together through the submerged tunnels like echoes of the same thought. The cave system was unnatural, too linear, too reinforced. Not carved by water, but by hands, human hands, and Key knew the way. Ethan surfaced inside a chamber lined with rusted struts and flickering yellow panels. The ceiling was low, the air thick with mold and ozone. Water dripped from corroded pipes above, pooling at his feet. The alien crouched by a sealed hatch, claws brushing its surface like a ritual. Ethan approached cautiously, eyes flicking over faded markings. Omega-level containment, clearance void, hazard, cognitive breach. The text was Terran. The symbol beneath it was worse. 3 concentric rings, a skull within a circuit. Ethan exhaled sharply. Goddamn Black Iris. Black Iris had been a ghost story even in his active years, a branch of weapons development so secret that even their failures were purged. They didn't make bombs, they made ideas. Mimetic tools, neural parasites, smart weapons that could think faster than their creators. Most were banned after the Treaty of Thessal Prime. Some just disappeared, yet here it was, untouched, sealed, guarded. Key watched him from the shadows, not aggressive, not afraid, something else. Devotion. Ethan stepped forward, placing a hand on the hatch. It hummed faintly beneath his palm. Still powered, still alive, he turned to the alien. Why? Key didn't answer. Not in words, but something passed between them. A flicker of shared memory, his mind nudged by pulses of low-frequency thought. He saw images again, not as violent this time. A Terran officer handing a silver capsule to a younger Key. No, not Key exactly. A juvenile version, kneeling, receiving, then chaos, screams, the jungle burning. Key, older now, alone in the caves. Waiting, Ethan stepped back. They hadn't just built this station. They used Key's kind, weaponized them. or worse, made them custodians of horrors they could never fully understand. He looked around the chamber with fresh eyes. This wasn't a weapons cache. It was a tomb, and Key was its last mourner. The thought made Ethan's skin crawl. Why hadn't it turned on him? Claimed the arsenal, alerted its species. He didn't know. And that terrified him more than any threat of claws or teeth. Later, as he sat by the edge of a flooded corridor, watching Kai gently pulse its fins in the shallow pool, Ethan felt the old weight in his chest return. He remembered Obsidian, the way his commanding officer had promised extraction, even as orbital scans showed no ships in range, the way trust had collapsed in a single breath. He'd sworn never to follow orders again, never to believe in causes. And now, here he was, shoulder-deep in another Terran secret, surrounded by lies and tech that should have never existed. But the thing beside him hadn't lied, not once. Key moved closer, lowering its head in a slow, deliberate motion. A gesture of peace, gratitude, submission, Ethan didn't know. But for the first time in years, he didn't flinch. The hatch groaned open after 12 hours of work. Manual bypasses, fused conduits, rehydrated code keys Ethan hadn't touched since his military years. The chamber beyond hissed with stale air and chemical static. He stepped inside, flashlight beam cutting through the dark like a scalpel. The room wasn't large. A containment vault no bigger than a utility garage, reinforced with tritium carbon alloy. In its center stood a single object, floating 6 inches above a magnetic cradle, a spindle-shaped core, smooth as obsidian, laced with microfilament veins that pulsed like veins beneath skin. No visible ports, no control panels, just a warning etched into the pedestal in flaking paint. Neural weapon, cognitive class Omega. Direct interface prohibited. Ethan's breath slowed. He approached cautiously, scanning for residual energy fields. The readings were low, barely detectable, but active. He reached out, gloved hand hovering inches away. A flicker. The core blinked once, he froze, then the pulse hit him. It was like drowning in light. A sharp crack behind his eyes, then a tidal wave of memory, not from the device, but from deep within his own skull. Obsidian, rain screaming down like bullets, his squad moving through knee-deep floodwater, formation tight. Then the explosion, metal shrieked, water rushed in. Voices, shouting, pleading. Hands reaching toward him, then silence. The surface too far. The light above gone, Ethan screamed. He stumbled back, crashing into a wall, ripping off his gloves as if they were burning. His breathing came in sharp, animal gasps. He hadn't felt that day in years, had buried it so deep it barely existed. But the weapon hadn't invented anything. It had asterisk retrieved asterisk. He collapsed to his knees, shaking. From the doorway, Key entered silently. The creature watched, then crouched beside him. Without touch, without sound, it sent a vibration through the air. A low, almost melodic hum that resonated inside Ethan's chest. The weapon had reached into him. Key knew, another pulse, not physical, not even mental, but something deeper. A message transmitted across a thread of biological sympathy, bypassing words. We tried it once, we lost ourselves. Ethan looked up. Key's biolights flickered slowly, like a dying firefly. Don't follow what we could not return from. The pieces snapped together. Key wasn't just a guardian of the weapon. It had once been asterisk part of it. The scars on its neck weren't natural, lined with metallic traces, surgical precision. The eyes, biomechanically enhanced, maybe even designed to see thought. He wasn't looking at an alien. He was looking at a survivor of human experimentation, a failed project abandoned. And yet, Key still guarded the vault. Ethan stood slowly, arms trembling. Why? He muttered aloud. Why protect this? Key didn't answer, not in words. Instead, it turned and gestured, if it could be called that, toward the upper levels, where the roof had cracked and the jungle had begun to seep in again. There was movement, a sound, high-pitched, mechanical. Ethan followed Key through the flooded corridor, climbing the slick metal rungs back into the open air. And there, above the canopy, he saw them, Ships, sleek, silent, not human. A formation of 6 triangular-winged vessels slicing across the sky like scalpels. No contrails, no broadcast signals. But Ethan recognized the markings. He'd seen them on war briefings and encrypted footage. The Teljari sovereignty. One of the more aggressive members of the Galactic Alliance. Paranoid, technologically advanced, and openly hostile to anything classified as Omega-tier weaponry. They weren't scouting, they were converging. Ethan's wristcom crackled, static. Then a coded emergency transmission, piggybacking off the planetary relay. Auto-translated in his earpiece. Unidentified neural core activity detected in Sector 7. Protocol Sigma enacted. All entities within 10-kilometer radius are to be neutralized. No preamble, no diplomacy. Purge order. He stared at the horizon where the lead ship began its descent, skimming low over the drowned canopy. Vapor trails rose as anti-life thrusters activated, sterilizing the air as they moved. They didn't know who he was, they didn't care. Only that something ancient and human had stirred. Ethan turned to Key. They had less than 5 minutes before the first wave. He activated his beacon, paused, and then deactivated it again. He could call for extraction, alert Terran command, get himself airlifted out, and let the whole zone be scrubbed clean. But he knew what would happen. The vault would be destroyed, the data lost. Key, classified as contaminated biological tech, would be executed or vivisected. No one would ask questions. No one would bury the past. Or he looked back at the vault. The core still pulsed faintly. Waiting, he had interfaced with it once, by accident. But what if it could be asterisk used? He'd seen the schematics buried beneath the warning. Neural sync reflex enhancement, predictive response architecture, emotional filtration. It didn't turn soldiers into machines. It turned them into asterisk mirrors asterisk, reflecting every decision, every trauma, every intention with merciless clarity. Most people couldn't survive that. Maybe he couldn't either. But he wasn't most people. He turned to Key. I need your help. Key tilted its head. Then, slowly, it stepped forward and placed one clawed hand against Ethan's chest. The pulse that followed was gentler this time. Not invasion, invitation. Ethan nodded. Decision made. He didn't know what the next hour would bring. But for the first time since Obsidian, he wasn't just reacting. He was asterisk choosing. The spinal interface clicked into place with a sound like bones snapping underwater. Ethan gritted his teeth as the neural filaments embedded themselves into his vertebrae. The pain wasn't sharp. It was deep asterisk, like a memory being carved into the marrow. A flood of data surged up his spine, bypassing his conscious thoughts, forcing his mind to make room for another present. For a moment, everything went white. Then he opened his eyes, and he wasn't alone. Key's presence slid into him like the echo of a second heartbeat. Not words, not thoughts, but a kind of intuitive awareness. He could feel the alien's tension in his own muscles. Hear sounds through ears that weren't his. Taste the saline currents of the flooded jungle, as if through a second mouth. Their minds didn't merge. They ran parallel, 2 hemispheres sharing a skull. Ethan staggered forward, breath shallow, overwhelmed by sensory overlap. But Key steadied him, emotionless, measured, as if they'd practiced this synchronization for years. And not a moment too soon. Above the treetops, the alien fleet had begun deploying. 6 troop vessels released their cargo in rhythmic bursts. Pods that didn't crash, but splashed into the swamp with sickening elegance. They cracked open like shells, spilling out sinewy shapes, amphibious organisms engineered for war. Not machines, not soldiers. Horrors born of water and command. Creatures with translucent skin and spined tails slithered into the underbrush, eyes glowing with hive-bound intention. They didn't make sound, didn't need to. They moved like predators who'd already tasted the outcome. Ethan's enhanced HUD flickered, his vision now layered with real-time threat assessments, courtesy of the neural core. No calculations, just intuition elevated to combat art. Key lunged beside him. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The first enemy struck from beneath the surface. A blur of muscle and barbed limbs. Ethan's hand moved before he thought, intercepting the blow with a fluidity that didn't belong to him. Key followed, sweeping low, claws slicing through water with surgical precision. No kills, only disarm, disable, don't trigger escalation. They moved like one being split across two bodies, flowing through the chaos as if dancing through memories. Key's instincts for evasion, Ethan's experience with terrain and tactics. Each step coordinated, each feint anticipated. The alien beasts faltered, not out of fear but confusion. Their enemy wasn't killing. It was asterisk outmaneuvering asterisk, outsmarting, treating the battlefield like a conversation instead of a slaughter. For a moment, it worked, until the humans arrived. At first, Ethan thought the gunfire was from the aliens, until he saw the flashes of matte black armor and Terran rifles. 5 of them, fanning out across the canopy's edge. Precision-trained, voices clipped and efficient. Mercenaries. He recognized the unit's insignia before the faces. The Iron Crows. Disbanded 3 years ago after a scandal involving weapons recovery missions gone rogue. Now operating off-record, loyal only to profit. And leading them, Commander Alec Darnes, Ethan's former co, the man who'd left them to die at Obsidian. Targets confirmed, Darnes' voice echoed through the swamp, filtered through a mask but unmistakable. Objective is non-lethal retrieval of subject core. Secondary objective, neutralize anomaly and destroy Vault. Ethan froze. Key twitched beside him, already coiling in preparation for flight. But Ethan didn't move. A pulse of rage flared in his chest. A memory surfaced. Darnes' voice over a broken comm, promising evac, lying with the ease of a politician. The image of Keller drowning. Marius bleeding out with no medevac. That voice was now hunting him again. The neural core reacted. Without his input, it pulled at the memory, amplified it, until his vision blurred, overlaid with the image of blood in water. Pain sharpened, muscles coiled. Key surged forward, and without touching him, Asterisk intervened. A sudden pressure in his skull. Then a wave of calm. It wasn't sedation, it was Asterisk disassociation. Key, through the link, peeled Ethan away from the memory, creating mental distance, like slipping out of a burning house and watching it from the hill. The anger was still there, but no longer in control. Ethan inhaled, focus returned, he turned to Key. "Thank you." Key didn't nod, just moved beside him ready. The mercs advanced, cautious, rifles raised, unaware they were being flanked not just by alien fauna, but by something far more precise. Ethan took point. He didn't fire to kill, just to redirect. Flashbangs underwater. Sonic disruptors set at non-lethal frequencies. Key used its strength to collapse terrain, trap them in rising tides and root systems. They fought without taking lives, only breaking formation. But Darnes didn't fall back. He activated an EMP grenade, disabling Key mid-strike, and leveled his rifle at the creature's core. "Step aside, core." Ethan stood between them. "I said step aside. That thing isn't your friend. It's a failed experiment." "So am I," Ethan said quietly. "Your property." "So is it, and that vault belongs to the board." Ethan stared at him. The swamp hissed with tension. "You left us to die," Ethan said, the words not bitter but surgical. "And you'll do it again, to anyone, for a contract." Darnes didn't flinch. "Because I follow orders, you follow asterisk ghosts." Ethan lowered his weapon, then moved asterisk. Key reactivated at the same moment. They struck as one, not with fury but with finality. A burst of movement, a neural echo. The rifle went flying, Darnes slammed into the ground, pinned by root and water. No blood, just silence. Ethan stared down at the man who had once been his commanding officer, who had once decided his worth asterisk, with a single line of radio silence. Now Ethan chose otherwise. He turned away. Key followed. The jungle closed behind them. Above, the alien ships hovered undecided. The lack of casualties confused their scans. The battlefield from the sky looked like a failed assault, not a successful defense. They waited, and Ethan realized, asterisk, he could use that. The sky over Vierks cracked open like a dying lung. The alien fleet descended in formation, 12 ships wide, flanking the drowned jungle like vultures circling a rotting battlefield. Their hulls shimmered with refractive plating, barely visible to the naked eye, but Ethan could feel them, not through sensors, through ki. He stood knee-deep in brackish water, pulse synced to a being not of his kind. Thoughts fused with a weapon that no longer obeyed simple input. The neural core didn't just enhance his body, it reflected asterisk his intentions, amplified his hesitation, translated ethics into electrical currents, and right now it was asking him a question without words. Will you strike first? Above the treetops, the fleet deployed its final act. Gas canisters the size of gunships, designed not to kill combatants, but to sterilize the ecosystem, to erase memory, gene pool, potential. A strategic erasure, the kind only cowards and bureaucrats authorized. Key stirred beside him, weak but still alert. The sink was deep now. Ethan could feel the alien's pain like a phantom limb. Their thoughts didn't overlap, but their instincts did. The vault's control panel hissed behind them, waiting for a final command. Ethan moved. His hands hovered over the Omega console, where war and extinction were just keystrokes apart. The neural weapon hummed in anticipation, scanning for emotional alignment, decoding every twitch of his muscle as a possible trigger. He could wipe the fleet. A full-release cascade from the vault would fry every neural relay aboard those ships, no matter the species. It would be surgical, clean, and total. But something inside him pushed back. A memory. Keller's eyes as water filled her lungs. The betrayal at Obsidian. The look in Darn's eyes when he justified the lie. Because I follow orders. No, not this time. He reached into the weapon's deeper interface, past the combat modules, past the kill switches, and found something buried beneath encryption. Biosignal synthesis suite. A tool meant for deception. He didn't need to destroy the fleet. He just needed them to believe they were already dead. His fingers danced across the console. The neural core flared white-hot against his spine. Sweat poured down his back. Key placed one hand on his shoulder, stabilizing him, lending something deeper than strength. Focus *. He initiated the protocol. A false transmission burst upward, masked as a distress call from the alien flagship. Layered with biomechanical markers only the enemy would trust. It reported catastrophic internal failure, oxygen breach, biosignature of the fleet admiral flatlined, and then silence, exactly as if they had destroyed themselves. Up above, the descending fleet faltered. The canisters didn't drop. A moment passed, then two, and slowly the ships began to ascend. One by one, they peeled away from the sky, retreating like sea creatures, disturbed by something too ancient to fight. It was working, but the weapon's feedback loop surged too hard. The console overloaded. Sparks leapt into the air. A cable burst behind Ethan, whipping dangerously close. Key moved first. The alien lunged, shoving Ethan out of the way just as the platform cracked open, exposing the raw bioenergy field pulsing beneath. A lightning arc of stored neural current lashed upward. Key screamed, not aloud, but through the link. Ethan felt it like a blade sliding between his ribs. The sink spasmed, his vision doubled. Then Key collapsed. The sink shattered. Ethan dropped beside him, adrenaline failing to catch up with panic. Key, look at me. He cupped the alien's head in both hands. The bioluminescence in Key's eyes flickered erratically. Ethan's HUD rebooted, offering options. Manual detonation, total neutralization, wipe all traces. But Key was dying, and Ethan knew. If he left now, if he reached the vault's override and triggered the final failsafe, he could ensure no one ever found this place again. The weapon, the vault, the lie, or he could save *1 life. One being who had never once turned on him, who had protected the vault not for power, but because it was taught *2, created to serve, then abandoned to remember *. He looked at the core. Its pulses were slowing, waiting for a decision. Key's chest heaved once. Twice, Ethan lifted the alien into his arms. "I'm not leaving you." He turned his back on the vault. The system didn't resist. In that moment, without input, the weapon made its own asterisk decision. Something within the Omega Core registered the ethical weight of Ethan's choice. Not the logic, the asterisk motive asterisk. And for the first time in its recorded history, the system activated an autonomous protocol not designed by human hands. It initiated self-obfuscation, a full simulation of detonation. Plasma bloom, seismic tremor, radiation trace, replicated with synthetic energy signatures and timed bursts. Above, the satellites read total annihilation. The alien fleet received confirmation. The vault was gone. Target erased. No further action needed. No one had to die. Ethan never saw it happen. He stumbled through the rising water, Key's blood mixing with the brackish current. The jungle had grown quiet, not peaceful, just empty. The storm had passed. He reached the edge of a rise where the canopy broke open into marsh. The sun pierced through smoke and cloud, a shaft of gold lighting the muck like spotlight on a forgotten stage. He knelt there, setting Key down gently. The alien's breathing was shallow now, each exhale a ripple. Ethan placed one hand over the biolights along its chest, trying to steady their flicker. "You held the line," he whispered. "You didn't need to, but you did." Key blinked slowly, barely conscious. Their minds were no longer linked, but Ethan felt something anyway. Not a voice, just quiet understanding. And then Key exhaled. Still not lifeless, just asterisk still asterisk. Ethan remained there, not moving, until the sun dipped lower, and the vault's final ripple vanished beneath the waterline. In that silence, with no witnesses and no medals, he did something he hadn't done in years. He wept. Ethan awoke to the sound of dripping water. A single droplet struck rusted steel overhead, echoing like a heartbeat in the quiet room. Fluorescent panels flickered above, faded from age and moisture. His body ached, but the pain was dull, distant, like something remembered rather than felt. He turned his head. The room was unfamiliar, a makeshift medbay, pieced together from scavenged Terran tech and organic insulation. Through a cracked window, the distant canopy of Viarx shimmered in soft green light. He wasn't alone. A figure moved quietly in the corner, mixing something in a ceramic bowl. She was small, humanoid but not human, skin a soft shade of lilac, her hair braided with vines. When she noticed him stir, she offered a gentle nod. "You're safe," she said in a voice shaped by multiple languages. "You've been sleeping for 3 days. Where?" His throat was dry. "Outpost Wren, a nomad settlement. We found you by the floodplain unconscious. You had injuries, but nothing we couldn't fix." Ethan tried to sit up. His muscles rebelled, but he managed. "And the other?" he asked quietly. Her face changed, not with cruelty, but with reverence. "He's gone." Ethan said nothing. The ache in his chest deepened, not from grief, but from the hollow that only trust could leave behind. "He left this," she added, from a pouch on her belt. She drew a small crystalline shard, glowing faintly with pulses of color that shifted with Ethan's breathing. She placed it in his hand, careful, as if delivering a heart. "It's not a weapon," she said. "We scanned it. It's something else. Memory, pattern, thought, refined." He held the shard gently, warm, alive. Key's final breath had not been silence, it had been preservation. A legacy encoded not in weapons or vengeance, but in asterisk understanding asterisk, in what it had asterisk learned from Ethan, and what Ethan had learned from it. A fragment of empathy cast in light. Word spread quickly across the systems, not about Ethan, not in detail, no war trophies, no broadcasted interviews, but Viarx changed on every navigational map, redesignated, non-intervention zone, treaty-level Omega, protected by consensus accord. Access requires diplomatic clearance, not because of a victory, but because something stranger had happened. No one had died, at least not in the way war expected. The alien fleet had withdrawn without a single confirmed kill. Terran authorities found no remains, only false sensor trails and a story too complex for press briefings. The vault appeared destroyed, all traces dissolved, but those who listened carefully, politicians, scientists, even war historians, understood the message whispered through diplomatic channels. A Terran weapon had been activated and had chosen asterisk not asterisk to fire, and the being that had helped protect it was not human. Ethan declined all medals. He refused the offer to return to Central Command. Instead, he returned to Vierks, not to the battlefield, but to the shallows where Key had once waited in silence. There, with the help of the nomads and a few off-world volunteers, he constructed something entirely new. A dome of glass and bone and stone, sunk half into the swamp. The listening hollow. It wasn't a military base or a lab. It was a sanctuary, part archive, part school, part cathedral. Creatures from multiple species came to it, some by invitation, some by rumor. There, under the guidance of the crystalline shard, Key's memory, Ethan helped them connect. Not through speech, not through violence, through shared neural resonance. The children came first, curious, unbroken by propaganda. They learned to sync their thoughts to simple frequencies, then to each other, feeling emotions not as threats, but as echoes of something mutual: grief, joy, hope, fear, the raw alphabet of being alive. Ethan never called it peace, but it was something close. He never explained everything. Some days he walked the perimeter in silence. Other days he taught scavenged history, how Terran minds once raced to outthink themselves, and how that same pride almost burned everything down. But always he returned to the shard. He spoke to it, not to hear answers, but to remember the ones already given. One dusk, as the sky turned violet and the air hung thick with pollen, a child approached him. The boy wasn't human, sleek-skinned, with pale gills and curious eyes. He had been practicing frequency harmonics all week, and had finally built up the courage to ask his question. "Sir," the boy said, sitting beside him. Ethan glanced down. "Yes," the child tilted his head. "Did you ever kill an alien?" Ethan blinked. The question was not accusatory, just honest. He looked out across the swamp, where fireflies blinked like memories. "No," he said at last, "but I saved one." The boy's eyes widened. "Was it scary, terrifying? Why?" "Because," Ethan said, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder, "the whole world told me to be afraid, but I chose to trust, and he trusted me back." The boy thought for a moment, then whispered, "And did it work?" Ethan smiled, weary but real. "He saved the world," he said, with his final breath. The boy said nothing more. He didn't need to. Together, they watched the sun sink beneath the flooded trees, where silence was no longer something to fear, but something to listen to. And beneath the dome, the shard pulsed gently. Key still remembered, and so did Ethan.